Fat Rollers Bill with Rollstats. I know, it's been a while. What can I say? There hasn't really been anything good to talk about. But luckily, there is a new game that has reignited my passion for RPGs. A new book that has really piqued my curiosity and filled me with the inspiration to spread the word of its glory to you. And no, it's not that game. You couldn't pay me to play that game. I'm talking about a good game. I'm talking about a game that is truly worth playing. I'm talking about Shadowdark. So, if you're like me and you've been sort of turned off by the modern RPG scene and you've been longing for the thrill and excitement of an RPG that actually challenges you, a game that doesn't assume you're a demigod at level 1, hell, a game where the choices you make as a player actually matter, those choices have real and oftentimes lethal consequences, Shadowdark has got you covered. This is a game that captures the essence of classic tabletop role-playing while introducing innovative modern mechanics. So it really is my new favorite game. It's one that I've been playing for over a year now. I ordered it when it first came out on the Kickstarter, and it hasn't let me down at all. In fact, I love it. Shadowdark, right? Shadowdark. So let's jump in. So Shadowdark from the Arcane Library is the brainchild of Kelsey Dion. And I have to be honest with you, she really created something magical here. This is not just a game. It's a love letter to the golden age of tabletop gaming, especially old school D&D, right? BX Dungeons & Dragons. The good Dungeons & Dragons. So if you're like me and you have fond memories of high-stakes dungeon delving, endless hours of adventuring, and those really gritty hex crawls, then this game is going to feel like coming home. So what sets Shadowdark apart is how it seamlessly blends that nostalgia, that nostalgia for old school gaming with some really modern convenient mechanics. It's not just a clone. It's not simply a throwback. It's a fresh, rules-light take that preserves the magic of classic gaming while innovating in ways that make it accessible, immersive, and a blast for everyone at the table, whether they're new or old. So trust me, I promise you, whether you're a seasoned grognard or a total noob, this game has something really special for you. So one of the features that sets Shadowdark apart is its use of real-time mechanics. And trust me, this adds a whole new layer of tension and immersion to the game. So for example, torches burn for 1 hour of actual playtime. This means you really feel the urgency as you navigate through dark, dangerous dungeons, ancient tombs, what have you. Every minute counts, and the atmosphere is thick with suspense as you confront those lurking threats. This mechanic, it ramps up the tension in a very real way, and it forces you to think quickly and strategically. Look, you have to make decisions on the fly because your dwindling light source is pushing you to balance caution with haste, right? That clock is ticking. Simple tasks suddenly become critical moments where running out of light can have really serious and very dire consequences. This constant pressure keeps everyone engaged and on their toes. It makes the game way more exciting and intense. So let me give you an example. Let me just give you a quick example. Picture this. Your party is deep in a crumbling dungeon. The air around you has a foul, stale smell. It's a mixture of mold and wet fur and something kind of off, the smell of death. You're creeping down a narrow hallway. Torchlight is flickering, and the GM casually mentions, you hear a scratching, skittering noise on the stone behind you, and a low, gravelly growl ahead. Suddenly, the alarm sounds on the torch timer the GM said an hour ago, and he leans forward and says, your torch sputters, fizzles, and goes out. You're in utter darkness. This is when panic sets in. It is panic time for your players. Without light, they're blind. Attacks have disadvantage. Monsters can sneak up on them, and even basic tasks feel damn near impossible. It's not just a gimmick. It changes how you approach the entire game. Every decision feels way more urgent. That ticking clock forces you to weigh every choice carefully. You're going to find yourself counting torches like they're gold because honestly, in Shadowdark, they kind of are. But it's not just about a real-time torch mechanic. Let's talk about inventory management, which I know. Inventory management doesn't sound exciting. But trust me, In Shadowdark, it becomes a game in a game. It's a game in itself. So the system uses this really clever gear slot system, and the number of slots you have is based on your strength stat or a base number of 10, whichever is higher. So you can't just load up on everything. You have to make some tough choices about what to take and what to leave behind. Every item takes up a slot, whether it's weapons, armor, torches, rations, what have you. This means you have to prioritize and adapt your strategy based not just on what you can use, but what you can carry. Do you take those extra healing potions or do you pack more torches? These decisions can make a big difference in your survival and success in the Shadowdark. They're a real part of the game. So again, for example, imagine you're about to head out into a dungeon. You've got your standard loadout, your sword, your armor, a few torches, some healing potions, etc. Just standard loadout, right? But you also want to grab that cool magical dagger you found in the last session. Well, here's the problem. You've only got one slot left. Do you ditch the rations and hope you don't get stuck in the Shadowdark for too long? Or do you leave behind the healing potion and hope you don't take too many hits? Every choice feels important because your inventory is finite. You can't just carry everything. We're not hand-waving this, right? But the inventory system isn't about meaningless bookkeeping. It adds depth to the game. It makes resource management a critical part of your gameplay. You have to plan your expeditions carefully. You have to think about each item's weight and its usefulness for that particular foray, right? This constant need to manage your time and inventory affects everything you do in Shadowdark, from roleplay to fighting to exploring. It adds a layer of strategy and realism that you really don't see in most modern RPGs. It makes every decision feel important and impactful. And it's not just about what you bring into the dungeon. It's about what you find while you're there, right? If you discover a chest full of gold, but your inventory is full, what do you leave behind? Shadowdark turns inventory management into a high-stakes puzzle, and I am here for it. So combat in Shadowdark is all about speed and danger. The game keeps things straightforward and approachable for newer players with the familiar D20 mechanic, right? Overall, the combat process, it isn't groundbreaking. It's streamlined and easy to grasp. You can focus on the action instead of getting bogged down in complicated rules. But what really kicks things up is the magic system. There are no spell slots in this game. There are no spell slots in Shadowdark. It's not this guaranteed fire and forget kind of deal. So casters can attempt to cast spells as often as they want, right? Every round if they want to. But every spell is a gamble. It makes magic feel dangerous, like you're tapping into forces you barely understand. Think DCC. Casting spells isn't just about waving your hands and saying some words. Casters have to make spellcasting checks, and then there's a real risk involved. If you fail, you can't cast that spell again until a full rest, right? And if you roll a 1, you trigger a mishap that ranges from a minor hiccup to a complete disaster. This makes magic in Shadowdark a double-edged sword. It's powerful, but it's perilous. It's this blend of simplicity and risk that makes magic in Shadowdark so engaging and exciting. Honestly, truly, it's the most fun I've had playing a wizard in years. So one thing you're not going to be used to, Shadowdark handles initiative differently than most RPGs. Unlike the usual turn-based systems where you roll for initiative at the start of combat, Shadowdark keeps everyone in a constant state of readiness. So right at the start of the game, the GM establishes turn order by having everyone roll a d20 and adding their dex modifier. The player with the highest roll goes first, and then the turns proceed clockwise from there. Why would you want to do this, right? It isn't just for combat. It's used throughout the game to streamline exploration, decision-making, and interactions. It creates engagement. What it really accomplishes is player engagement. We've all had that player, usually a new player, right, who's too shy or too unsure of themselves. They're too worried to make a mistake, to speak up during roleplay or during exploration. They tend to get steamrolled by other players who are more vocal, more experienced, that really know what they're doing, right? And you only hear from that player when it's their turn. Always on initiative ensures that they always get a turn, every round, whether they're in combat or not. Finally, the thing I really love about Shadowdark is its use of flat math in the game mechanics. So what do I mean by flat math? Well, your stat modifiers max out at +4, and difficulty classes, the DCs, they stay consistent. Easy tasks are DC 9, normal ones are DC 12, and hard ones are DC 15. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it works. No overinflated numbers for the sake of overinflated numbers, no double-digit modifiers, and no min-maxing. This approach does something really important. It eliminates power creep. In most modern RPGs, higher level characters become so overpowered that nothing feels like a challenge anymore. But in Shadowdark, even at higher levels, a group of goblins can ruin your day. If you're not careful, they can decimate your party, right? Every fight feels like it could go sideways, and that keeps the game exciting. This approach, it's all about keeping things simple and balanced, making the game accessible and fun for everyone, no matter how much experience you have, right? There are no optimal builds in Shadowdark. In fact, it's damn near impossible to create an optimal build because you're rolling stats 3d6 down the line. And instead of choosing broken feats and godlike abilities, you're rolling randomly for talents. So talents in Shadowdark represent unique abilities or skills, right, that set your character apart. And they're designed to enhance the gameplay while staying true to the game's old school streamlined approach. So let's say you're playing a fighter and you just leveled up. Yeah, good for you. You roll 2d6 on the fighter talent table and you get an 8. The result is +2 to either your strength, dex, or con stat. So your choice, whatever you feel fits your fighter better. It's a sweet roll, right? But that's the point. It's a random roll. You didn't choose that. The dice gods did. You discover your character through gameplay and leveling, just like in real life. You don't plan your build from the beginning to be the most optimal demigod possible. Your character evolves through gameplay. So these changes, these things that set Shadowdark apart, make it a must-play RPG for fans of classic dungeon crawls, and really anyone looking for a fresh, immersive experience. With its real-time mechanics, dangerous casting, and brilliant blend of old school and modern design, it's a game that feels both nostalgic and innovative, right? So it is a must play, but what about the nuts and bolts? What about the core gameplay mechanics? Well, let's take a look. All right, let's talk about character creation. This system is so easy to understand that you can jump right in and start crafting your crawler without wading through a mountain of rules. We'll break it down really quickly, right? So first up, ancestries. This is Shadowdark's version of races, right? And each one has traits and bonuses that really shape your character's playstyle. Dwarves are exactly what you would expect dwarves to be. They're tough as nails and start with +2 HP, and they roll additional hit points per level with advantage. If you want someone who can take a hit and keep going, dwarves are definitely the way to go. Elves are graceful and precise. They get a +1 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons or spellcasting checks, and they're perfect for like the archer or the wizard in your party. Goblins are sneaky and cunning, as they should be, right? Their keen senses trait means they can't be surprised, so that makes them excellent scouts or ambushers in the party. Halflings are small, but they're mighty. Their stealthy trait lets them turn invisible for 3 rounds once per day, which is a total game changer in tight situations, let me tell you. But if you want raw power, half-orcs got you covered. They get a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with melee weapons, so trust me, they hit hard. And finally, humans, right? Humans are the jack of all trades. They get an additional talent roll at first level, giving you a great head start in versatility. And trust me, do not underestimate the value of an additional talent roll at first level. It's amazing. So that brings us to the classes, which, just like in every RPG, determine what your character is good at, right? Shadowdark keeps it classic with 4 core classes, at least in the standard rulebook. There are more classes in zines, but just for this review, we're talking about the standard rulebook. So the heavy hitter, fighters are proficient with all weapons and armor, and they get talents like weapon mastery. They really dominate in combat. Priests are your divine spellcasters who can heal, turn undead, and just call on their gods for power. They're your team's moral compass, and sometimes it's lifeline, right? Masters of stealth and precision, thieves excel at backstabbing, lockpicking, and sneaking past danger. They're your problem solvers in tight spots, your specialists. And then finally, the masters of arcane magic. Wizards can learn a huge variety of spells, but they have to manage the risk of spell mishaps, which keeps things really exciting. And then stats, right? Rolling stats. Rolling stats in Shadowdark is as old school as it gets. You roll 3d6 for each of your 6 stats: strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, in order. No rearranging, no optimizing. What you roll is what you get, and I love that. It forces you to think creatively about how to play the character you end up with. Abilities are about as you would expect, no surprises there, but for the sake of being thorough, we'll do a quick rundown of what each stat does. Strength is your physical power, right? Great for fighters. No huge surprise. Dexterity, agility, and precision. Perfect for thieves, but also dex-based fighters. If you want to be an archer, again, no surprise. Constitution, your endurance and health. It's vital for everyone, let's be honest. Intelligence is your logical thinking and, magic for wizards, right? Wisdom is intuition and divine magic. It's for your priests, again, not surprising. And charisma, charm, and social skills. It's useful in negotiations and in just social interactions, right? Nothing is surprising here. Nothing is really different. But the randomness of rolling stats makes every character unique, and it adds a layer of unpredictability that keeps things interesting. You don't get to decide what your character is. Your character basically comes through the rolling of stats. So one session you might end up with a bruiser of a fighter, and the next you're playing a squishy but brilliant wizard. The best part, this whole process in creating a character in Shadowdark takes like 10-15 minutes tops. You're not stuck in character creation for hours. You're rolling dice, making choices, and jumping straight into the action. Shadowdark's character creation is simple, it's fun, and it gives you everything you need to hit the ground running. So if you've played any modern RPG, really any RPG, you already know how to do ability checks. It's really no different in Shadowdark. The only difference is there are no proficiencies. Whenever your character tries to do something risky or uncertain, scaling a cliff, picking a lock, wrestling for a torch with an orc, the GM will call for a check. You're going to roll a d20, you're going to add the relevant stat modifier, and if you have sort of like a trait or talent modifier, you can add that as well, and then you hope to meet or beat the DC. So for example, you're trying to kick down a door, you're going to add your strength modifier. You're sneaking past a guard, that's your dexterity. Trying to sweet talk the innkeeper into giving you a discount, charisma all the way. You get the idea. Basically 5e without all of the proficiency bonuses. All right, let's talk about combat in Shadowdark, because if there's one thing this game does brilliantly, it's making every fight feel fast, deadly, and intense. Combat in Shadowdark is quick and brutal, so you won't be spending half the session bogged down in a tangle of modifiers and mechanics. Instead, fights feel like they actually matter, which is exactly what I want in a game where every battle could be my last, right? So if you've played any D20 based game, you already know how to do combat. In other words, how to attack. Attacking is going to feel super familiar, right? You're going to roll a D20 to attack. You're going to add your attack modifier, strength for melee weapons, dex for ranged weapons, etc., right? If your total equals or beats the target's armor class, you land the hit. But what I love about Shadowdark's combat system is that it keeps things punchy. There's no excessive number crunching, no endless attack and damage bonuses that just really slow things down and turn battle into a slog. If you hit, you roll your weapons damage die, and that's it. No modifiers, no extra math. If your weapon deals 1d6, what you roll is what you get. I love this because it means that damage rolls stay unpredictable and every swing counts at every level. And speaking of damage, let's talk about hit points. When you roll up your character, your class and constitution modifier determine how many HP you start with. And in true old school fashion, HP is precious. There's no magical full recovery between fights. You recover after a night's rest, and that is assuming you're lucky enough to find a safe place to sleep. This means every point of damage matters, and healing potions become absolute lifesavers, regardless of level. And let's not forget about critical hits, right? Roll a natural 20 and you double your damage dice. Nothing beats that feeling of scoring a crit, right? But it also means that enemies, yes, even goblins, can just as easily land a devastating blow against you. It keeps fights high stakes and unpredictable. So what happens if that goblin lands a crit? What happens when you go down? Well, When your HP hits 0, you're incapacitated and you start dying. So there is no instant death, but each round you have to roll a death save to see if you stabilize or if you keep bleeding out. You get 1d4 plus your constitution modifier in rounds before you permanently bite the dust. Well, unless someone stabilizes you first with a DC 15 intelligence check, but let me tell you, those rolls can get real tense, right? Combat in Shadowdark isn't just about hitting things, it's about thinking tactically. Let's say you're fighting a group of bandits, right? You could run in sword swinging. Or you could use the environment to gain an advantage. Maybe you shove an enemy off a ledge, drop a chandelier on them, or tip a table over for cover, right? These aren't just extra options. These are things you're expected to do. They're encouraged. The game wants you to think outside of the box. The game doesn't want you to rely on a character sheet. The game wants you to actively play the game, to use your environment, to think strategically. And speaking of environment, let's not forget the environment itself. Shadowdark makes terrain and cover matter. Using walls, furniture, and even darkness to your advantage can turn a losing fight into a victory. At the end of the day, Shadowdark's combat is fast, it's deadly, and it's cinematic. It makes you feel like every fight matters. Because it does! You can't just wade into battle expecting to come out unscathed. Every choice, every movement, every roll counts, and that's what makes Shadowdark's combat some of the most exciting and satisfying I've ever played. So I've already covered magic, real-time mechanics, and resource management briefly in the What Sets Shadowdark Apart section, right? But if you want a more detailed explanation of those mechanics, you can find one on my blog, rollstats.com. I'll leave a link below in the description to the full review there. Covers those mechanics in greater detail. But now, let's move on to exploration and encounters. So I ended up with an hour and a half long video. All right, let's talk about one of the most exciting aspects of Shadowdark, exploration and encounters. So I wouldn't blame you if you assumed Shadowdark is just a dungeon crawler. And while, yeah, dungeons are a big deal, this game is so much more than just creeping through dark corridors, through ancient ruins, right? The world of Shadowdark is alive, it's unpredictable, and it's full of unique locales and challenges that will keep you on your toes from session to session, right? Shadowdark is all about diving into the unknown. That doesn't just mean dungeons, right? So whether that's delving into an ancient ruin, navigating a cursed forest, or unraveling city intrigue, the game has mechanics and tables to support exploration in a variety of environments, right? Each with its own unique opportunities and dangers. There are so many tables in here that cover things like dungeons, right? The classic dungeon, dark, labyrinthine, and filled with traps, monsters, and treasure. You're constantly making choices. Do we check out that ominous looking altar, or do we keep moving? Every hallway, every shadow could hold a secret or a lurking horror, hiding in the darkness. What if you're in a forest, enchanted woods, dense jungles, or barren wastelands? Tables to cover it, right? Each brings its own threat and rewards. Maybe you run into wild creatures that could be either foes or allies, right? Maybe there's a hidden grove that restores HP when you rest there. Or maybe that grove just lures you in with illusions before devouring your soul. The world is full of mysteries. You want to play in a city. Tables got you covered there too. These aren't just backdrops for buying gear, right? Shadowdark cities are bustling, dangerous places where you can get into just as much trouble as in a dungeon. You might cross paths with a shady guild, find a cursed relic in a market stall, or get roped into an underground fighting ring. The point is, cities are just as much a part of the adventure as the wilds, right? And to keep every adventure fresh, Shadowdark uses random encounter tables, tons of tables, tailored to different environments. Whether you're deep underground, lost in a jungle, or wandering through a lawless city, there are tables for that. And let me tell you, these encounters aren't just, oh no, a goblin appears. They're meaningful, they're exciting, and they keep you guessing. Shadowdark thrives on unpredictability. The GM might roll for an encounter every hour or at specific intervals depending on how dangerous the area is. They're going to basically roll on the table, right? This means you can never feel completely safe, which is exactly what you want in a BX-inspired game. You're always one bad roll away from stumbling into something horrific or something truly incredible. So some examples of random encounters you might run into. Let's say it's a dungeon encounter. Your party triggers a hidden trapdoor, plunging you into a crypt full of skeletal warriors. What do? Do you fight? Do you flee? Do you find a way to collapse the entrance? Or a forest encounter. You stumble across a group of forest spirits furious about a recent disturbance in their area, right? Do you calm them down? Or are you about to become their next sacrifice? You want a city encounter, right? A shady merchant offers you a rare artifact at a steep discount, but is it cursed? Is it stolen? Or is he working for someone far worse? These encounters, that you find in the tables in Shadowdark, they aren't just obstacles. They're opportunities for role play, resource management, strategic planning. Do you engage in combat? Do you try to negotiate? Or do you use the environment to your advantage? Every choice has consequences. Every choice matters. These random encounters shape the story dynamically. They test how well your party manages their resources, strategy, their creativity, right? Is your party running low on torches? That random underground flood might be their worst nightmare. Is your party short on supplies? Hey, maybe negotiating with those mercenaries is smarter than fighting them. Is your party overconfident? That harmless beggar in the alleyway might be something much, much worse. Shadowdark's world doesn't just sit there waiting for you. It reacts, it evolves, and it forces you to stay on your toes. Exploration in Shadowdark is never predictable, and that's exactly what makes it so damn good. Whether you're delving into the depths, navigating the wilds, or unraveling mysteries in a bustling city, the game keeps you immersed, it keeps you engaged, and constantly wondering what's around the next corner. All right, before we wrap up, we got to talk about one of the best parts of the Shadowdark, and that is the Shadowdark community, right? A great game is one thing, but a thriving, passionate player base takes that to a whole new level. And let me tell you, Shadowdark has one of the best, most engaged RPG communities I've ever seen. Whether you're looking for homebrew content, rule discussions, or just some good old-fashioned camaraderie, right? The players, creators, and fans of this game bring it to life in a way that makes it feel bigger than just a rule book, bigger than just a game system. Let's talk about Kelsey Dion, the mastermind behind Shadowdark. She's not just some distant game designer. She's actively engaged with the community. And in a real way, whether it's answering questions, gathering feedback, or just chatting with fans, she's right there in the mix. She's making sure the game stays fresh, making sure it stays relevant, and that it's truly player-driven, right? As it should be. But what really makes this community shine is the players, the GMs, the people who are participating in that community. Homebrew content, there is tons of it. Players are constantly making new classes, creatures, dungeons, rule tweaks, and they share them all freely, right? If you want inspiration for your next campaign, trust me, you will not have to look far. Do you need help with a rule? The community's got your back. Whether it's on forums, so think like Discord, Reddit, Twitter, wherever you want to go, right? You'll find GMs and players who are happy to help. How about collaborative projects? Oh yeah. The community regularly teams up to create new adventures, game expansions, unique settings. It really truly keeps the world of Shadowdark fresh and ever growing. At the end of the day, Shadowdark isn't just a game. This isn't just a game, it's a growing, evolving experience. It's fueled by a community of passionate gamers and creators. So whether you're a newcomer to Shadowdark looking to get started, right? Or you're a seasoned GM who's been playing for a while and you're just looking to homebrew your own twists, there's a place for you here. There's a place for you in the Shadowdark community. All right, so we've covered a lot about Shadowdark, but let's get down to it, right? The question we're all asking, is this game worth your time? Is this game worth your money? Does this game live up to the hype? Absolutely, without question. In my opinion, Shadowdark is a must-play RPG that hits the perfect balance between old-school grit and modern streamlined mechanics, right? Whether you're a veteran dungeon crawler looking for that raw, nostalgic thrill, right? Or a new player looking for a fast, accessible, and intensely immersive experience, this game, Shadowdark, delivers. And the best part, you don't even have to spend a dime to get started. That's right. You can grab the Shadowdark RPG Quick Start set for free right now. For free. So seriously, what are you waiting for? If you're curious about Shadowdark, if you're curious about this game, grab the Quick Start, roll up some stats, and dive in. You can find it over on DriveThruRPG, and trust me, you're not going to regret it. I'll leave a link in the pinned comment below. Shadowdark is everything I love about classic RPGs, but with modern mechanics that keep the action moving, the tension high, and the gameplay intuitive. It makes it accessible to newer, more modern players, right? It's got real-time mechanics that make you sweat when your torches burn low. It's got flat math that keeps things balanced and eliminates power creep. It's got fast and deadly combat that makes every encounter a fight for survival. But, more than that, this game has got soul. It's got passion. You can feel the passion behind this game. Every design choice is intentional, and it's crafted by a game designer who truly understands what makes RPGs unforgettable experiences. So here's my final verdict. Shadowdark is a must-play RPG. Whether you're an old veteran who's tired of bloated mechanics and you want a game that gets straight to the adventure, or a noob to RPGs in general and want a game that's easy to pick up and quick and engaging. But what do you think? Have you played Shadowdark, or are you excited to try it out? Let me know in the comments. Really, seriously, I want to talk about it. And if you enjoyed this review, hit that like button, subscribe for more RPG content, and share this video with your fellow crawlers. And as always, until next time, stat rollers, may the dice roll ever in your favor.